The car that picks me up Friday night is the same black sedan that idled outside the cafe. Of course it is. Nothing about this man does anything by half. The driver doesn't speak. Just opens the door, waits for me to get in, and drives like he's done this 100 times, which, based on the elevator man's lack of surprise a week ago, he probably has. I spend the whole ride rehearsing reasons to leave. I have at least 4 solid ones by the time the car stops outside a restaurant I couldn't afford in 3 lifetimes. I use none of them. Callum is already at the table when the host walks me over. Private room, low lighting, a view of the city that makes my apartment look like a shoebox in comparison. He stands when he sees me. Actually stands, like some old-fashioned gesture out of a black and white film, and pulls out my chair before I can do it myself. "You came," he says, like there was ever real doubt. I said one dinner. I sit, hands twisting in my lap. That's still all this is. Understood. He doesn't push. He just pours me a glass of wine I didn't order and lets the silence sit instead of filling it with something performative. I hate how comfortable that silence is. I hate that I'm not scrambling to fill it with nervous chatter the way I always do with strangers. So, I say eventually, because someone has to. "What does a man like you actually do?" Kai said imports. Imports is accurate. It's also not the interesting part of my life, and we both know it. He swirls his glass once. Ask the real question. Fine. How many people have you hurt? In business, or the way you're actually asking about? My face goes hot. The way I'm actually asking about. None who didn't ask for it the way you did. I don't do this with people who fear it, Rex. I do it with people who need it. His eyes hold mine, steady, unflinching. You're the first in a long time who didn't flinch when I offered. We talk longer than I expect to. Longer than one dinner should reasonably take. He tells me things I don't expect, not business, not danger, but smaller things. That he grew up in a house where control wasn't a preference, it was survival, where softness got exploited and precision kept you alive. That somewhere along the way, the same control that protected him became the only place he could ever fully let go, with someone who wanted him to. Most people who find out what I want, he says, quieter now, either run, or they perform it because they think it's what will keep me interested. Neither one is what I actually want. What do you actually want? Someone who isn't performing. Someone who wants exactly what I can give, because they need it too, not because they're afraid of what happens if they say no. I think about Dan's face. I hate what you want from me. I think about years of shrinking myself into something more digestible. That's my voice catches. That's all I've ever wanted too. Just to not be too much for once. Something shifts in Callum's expression, not triumph, not smugness. Something closer to recognition. Like he's looking at someone who finally speaks his language fluently. You were never too much, he says. You were just in the wrong rooms with the wrong people. I don't have a response for that. I don't trust my own voice not to break. We walk after, because neither of us wants the night to end yet, even though neither of us says that out loud. The city is quieter at this hour, softer, like it's giving us room to exist without an audience. Why me? I ask eventually. Out of everyone in that bar? Why did you let a total stranger cry all over your suit instead of having security remove me? Because you weren't performing, he says simply. You were exactly, entirely yourself at your worst possible moment, without a single ounce of shame about what you needed. I've spent my whole life around people who calculate every word before they say it. You didn't calculate anything. You just felt something and said it. That's not attractive, Callum. That's a mess. It's the least messy thing I've seen in years. He stops walking, turns to face me fully. I'm not interested in polished, Rex. I have polished. Polished is exhausting. I'm interested in real. The air between us goes charged, the same way it did in that hallway a week ago. But this time there's no vomit, no tears, no desperate grief driving the moment. This time it's just 2 people, standing on a quiet street, finally being honest. This can't just be one dinner, I say quietly. Can it? No, he agrees. It really can't. He doesn't rush anything. That surprises me more than anything else about him. For a man who wants control so completely, he's remarkably patient about earning it. Come back with me, he says. No expectations. If you want to just talk, we talk. If you want to leave the second we're through the door, I'll have the driver take you home myself. I already know what I want. I've known since the cafe, if I'm honest with myself, maybe since the hallway. I don't want to just talk. His hand finds the small of my back, warm and certain. Then let's go. The night unfolds slower this time. No desperation, no tears driving it. Just two people finally allowed to be exactly what they are with each other, without apology. He's attentive in a way I didn't expect from someone so controlled in every other part of his life. Every touch deliberate, every question asked before it's answered by guessing. Somewhere in the middle of it, I stop counting all the ways this is supposed to be a bad idea. I wake up in the same gold morning light as before. Different this time, though. I don't panic. I don't reach for my hoodie in a blind rush to disappear. Callum's awake already, propped up slightly, watching me with an expression I haven't seen on him yet. Something almost unguarded. "You didn't run," he says. I thought about it, I admit. For about 4 seconds. What changed? I think about it honestly before I answer. I think I finally found somewhere I don't have to shrink. He reaches over, tucks a piece of hair back from my face. Such a small, gentle gesture from a man capable of so much else. And it undoes something in my chest more than anything from the night before did. "Good," he says simply. "Because I wasn't planning on letting you go again." We don't get to stay in that quiet moment long. Callum's phone buzzes against the nightstand. Once, twice, insistent in a way that makes his whole body shift into something sharper, more alert. He reads the message, and I watch the warmth drain out of his expression, replaced by something colder. Something I recognize now as the version of him that runs half the imports in this city. "What is it?" I ask. "Someone's been asking questions," he says slowly. "About you. About us." My stomach drops. "What kind of questions?" "The kind that means someone in my business sees you as leverage." He sets the phone down, and for the first time since the bar, I see something in his eyes that looks almost like worry. "I have people who would very much like to see me weakened, Rex. And attachments are the easiest weakness to exploit. So what do we do?" He's quiet for a long moment, jaw tight. "You have a choice to make," he says finally. "I can walk away right now, and you go back to a normal life, and none of this ever touches you again. Or you stay, and you accept that being with me means being a target, and I do everything in my power to make sure that target is never actually hit." I think about Dan again, how safe and small my life was with him, how quiet, how fine. I think about how fine nearly ate me alive from the inside for 2 years. "I already told you." I say. "I don't want easy. I want real." Callum studies me for a long moment, like he's making sure I understand exactly what I'm agreeing to. "Then we handle this together," he says. "Whatever it takes." 2 days pass in a strange, suspended kind of calm. Callum sends a car for me each morning, as one of his people quietly present near the cafe, without ever making it feel like a cage. I try to convince myself this is manageable. Normal, almost. Then Kai calls me, voice tight in a way I've never heard from him. "Rex, there was a guy here, at the apartment building, asking the doorman questions about you, your schedule, who you've been seen with." He wasn't subtle about it. My blood goes cold. "Did he say anything else?" "He said to tell you Callum should remember what happened to the last person he got attached to." Kai's voice cracks slightly. "Rex, what does that mean?" "I don't know, but I know someone who does." I call Callum immediately, and for the first time since I've known him, I hear something in his voice that isn't controlled at all. It's fury, cold and precise. "Stay exactly where you are," he says. "I'm sending a car. Don't leave that building for any reason." "Callum, what did that mean?" "The last person you got attached to." Silence stretches long enough that I know the answer is worse than I'm imagining. "Someone I cared about, a long time ago," he says finally, voice flat. Before I understood how dangerous caring about someone actually was in my world. "I won't let that happen again. Not to you." He tells me the rest that night, in the quiet of his penthouse, both of us too tense to pretend at normalcy. Years ago, before the empire, before the control, there was someone else. Someone Callum loved before he'd learned the cost of loving anyone in his position. A rival organization found out, used that person as leverage to try to control him. When Callum refused to bend, they made an example of it. He doesn't say the word. He doesn't have to. "I built everything after that around never being vulnerable again," he says. Control wasn't just a preference anymore. It was the only thing standing between me and losing someone else. "And now you have me," I say quietly. "And you're vulnerable again." "Yes." He looks at me directly, no performance, no armor. And for the first time since then, I've decided I don't care. I'm not losing you to protect myself from feeling something. I'd rather feel this and fight for it than go back to being safe and empty. Something in my chest cracks open at that. Not from pain this time, but from finally being wanted exactly as I am, dangers and all. Then let's fight for it, I say. Together. Not you protecting me from a distance. Together. The rival makes his move 3 nights later. A man named Serrano, an old associate of Callum's father's organization who spent years waiting for exactly this kind of opening. He arranges a meeting under false pretenses, luring me to a location under the guise of a message from Kai. It's a trap, and I know it the second I arrive and Kai is nowhere in sight. Serrano is older than I expected, silver-templed, dangerously calm. You must be the reason Callum Draven has gotten careless, he says, circling me slowly in an empty warehouse office. I have to say, I expected someone more impressive. What do you want? Leverage, he says simply. Callum's always been untouchable because he's never given anyone something to hold over him. Until now. Before he can say more, the door behind him opens. Callum steps through, flanked by 2 of his people, expression colder and more controlled than I've ever seen it. The version of him that runs half a city's underground without ever raising his voice. Serrano, he says, you've made a significant error. Have I? Or have I simply found the one weakness you've spent your whole career avoiding? Callum's eyes flick to me, just briefly, an unreadable, steady look that somehow tells me everything will be fine, even now. He's not a weakness, Callum says, turning back to Serrano. He's the reason I remembered I have something worth protecting properly, instead of just avoiding loss by refusing to feel anything at all. That's not weakness. That's clarity. What happens next isn't violence in the way you'd expect from a story like this. No drawn-out fight scene, no bloodshed for shock value. It's colder than that. Callum simply lays out, with terrifying precision, exactly what Serrano stands to lose if he doesn't walk away tonight. Resources, allies, the fragile balance of power he's spent years building. Serrano, for all his bravado, isn't foolish enough to test it. He leaves. The threat, for now, is neutralized, not with violence, but with the kind of controlled, absolute power that made Callum who he is in the first place. Back at the penthouse, adrenaline finally drains out of both of us in the quiet aftermath. That won't be the last of it, Callum admits, sitting beside me, closer than strictly necessary. Men like Serrano don't disappear because of one conversation. But it buys us time. And it sends a message that you're not an opening, you're protected. I don't want to just be protected, I say. I want to actually understand this life if I'm going to be part of it. You will, he says. In time. I won't hide pieces of myself from you the way I used to hide them from everyone. That's not what this is anymore. I lean into him, and for the first time since that first drunken, desperate night, I feel something settle in my chest instead of spiral. I used to think I was too much for anyone, I say quietly. Dan made sure I believed that. You were never too much, Callum says, echoing his own words from the restaurant, quieter now, more certain. You were just waiting for someone who wanted exactly this much. Weeks pass. Kai meets Callum properly for the first time over an admittedly tense dinner that somehow ends in genuine laughter by the end of the night. Kai's fierce protectiveness slowly giving way to something like approval, once he sees how Callum actually looks at me when he thinks no one's paying attention. The watch stays on my wrist now, not hidden in a drawer. I still have the condition no doctor ever fully explained to me. I still need what I need. Hard and unflinching and impossible to soften for anyone else's comfort. But for the first time in my life, that need isn't something I'm apologizing for. It's something someone actually wants to give me, fully, without flinching, without performing endurance. Dan once told me he hated what I wanted from him. Callum has never once made me feel hated for it. Only known, only wanted, exactly as I am. No regrets. Callum asks me one quiet evening, watching the city lights from that same floor-to-ceiling window where this all properly began. None, I say, and mean it completely. I walked into the wrong room that night. Best mistake I ever made. He pulls me closer, and for the first time in longer than I can remember, I stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Some people spend their whole lives being told they're too much. I spent mine looking for the one person who'd call that exactly right. I found him in a hallway I wasn't even supposed to be in. That's it. Guys, that's the end of Rex and Callum's story. Thank you so much for sticking with this one from the very first wrong door to the very last page. This story has officially come to an end. If you love this one, make sure you're subscribed, because there are more stories like this coming to the channel. And trust me, you won't want to miss what's next.